Hi, good morning. This is Ryan Eldridge with Charter School Capital. It is right now almost time to start. We're going to give a couple more minutes just to let a few more registrants log on and gain access, and then we'll come back and start the webinar in about 2 minutes. Good morning. This is Ryan Eldridge with Charter School Capital, welcoming you to our introduction to our Medicaid billing program, part of our webinar series that we provide to charter schools across the country. This is a subject that came to us through a lot of our existing customer base asking for support and help along the way to possibly recoup some of the Medicaid billing services that they're providing to their students. And so through a collective effort, we reached out and partnered with a national organization and to provide this type of service in conjunction with the other services Charter School Capital provides, and to again provide additional resources, wraparound services for our schools as we look to partner with them moving forward. Currently, we are, hold on, I'm going to change slides here. There we go. We'll make this about, we have an hour scheduled, but the reality is that we'll be able to probably cruise through the slides in about 20 minutes or so, 20 to 30 minutes. And then if there's any additional questions at the end, just please hold your questions towards the end. We'll be glad to answer some of those at the end of the presentation. So what we'll do is we'll first cover quickly the background on Charter School Capital and also PCG. We'll cover the value of the Medicaid billing system, the platform and the process, if you were to be interested in utilizing our services, how that looks and feels for the school. And then we can wrap it up and discuss next steps at the end. So we'll just go ahead and we'll jump right into it. I am Ryan Eldridge, Senior New Business Specialist, and I've been with Charter School Capital for 6 years now. My primary markets that I focus on are California and Texas, two of the larger markets in the country. And I'm joined by Rich Collins from Charter School Capital. Rich, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, how's it going? I'm Rich Collins. I've been with Charter School Capital for just over 2 years now, and helped build the program and make the connection between us and Public Consulting Group to bring Medicaid billing services into our offering. So I'm the product specialist for Medicaid billing here at Charter School Capital, and excited to talk to you about the program.
Great, thanks, Rich. And Christy from PCG, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Christy Strickland. I am a consultant and the Texas Medicaid team lead for PCG. I've been with PCG for around 2.5 years and have been working with Medicaid to schools for probably around 6 years.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being on with us. So, taking a look at charter school capital, we are a finance company, a specialty finance company for charter schools nationally. Our entire focus is charter schools, hence the name. We basically, a lot of financial institutions typically kind of dabble in the charter school space, but our entire model is around that and providing resources and support for charters so that they can grow and thrive and continue to serve the students they have. We've been around for over 12 years. During that time, we've served over 1 million students nationwide, a cumulative count there over the years. During that time, it's over 700 charter schools we've served, some big, some small. We've put over $2 billion in the industry, and pretty proud of the track record we have both with our investors and our schools, making sure that we're supporting the good charters out there and the students they serve. Probably 5-6 years back, by demand, on top of the growth capital, startup capital, and bridge financing that we provide to charters, there was a lot of requests for our ability to finance the facility space. So we actually started that up about 5 years ago. During that time, we've accumulated a portfolio of about 42 schools that we help manage and operate. Everything from the acquisition of the property to tenant improvements to ongoing maintenance of those properties. In fact, we even have energy program upgrades for the schools as well. We're a company of about 60 employees based out of Portland, Oregon. However, we are a national footprint and have a number of people out in the field and in the states that we serve. I'm one that kind of bounces around the country, have some ties to the Dallas area. Both my mom and my sister live there, so I'm down there quite frequently. And again, we pride ourselves on making sure that we're doing right by the schools and the investors that we serve. So with that, Christy, I'm going to hand it off to you if you would like to discuss PCG.
Sure. So PCG, also known as Public Consulting Group, we're a privately held firm. We're headquartered in Boston, but we have presence throughout the country. In Texas, we have offices in Austin, and I'm actually officing out of the Dallas area. So the great thing about PCG is that we are nationally known. Nationally, we support school districts through IEP work, 504 work, and Medicaid work. We are the largest Medicaid and IEP vendor in the United States currently. So we serve around 4,200 school districts, including 18 of the 25 largest. In Texas alone, we have relationships with Houston and Dallas, and Fort Worth ISD is our largest Medicaid client. We've generated more than $6.2 billion in federal school-based Medicaid reimbursement for our clients. So we have Texas expertise, but we definitely have that national knowledge backing and perspective as well.
That's great. And part of the main reason why we look to partner with PCG from the onset is we evaluated a lot of the different service providers out there, and at the end of the day, there really was no question when we were looking to serve our schools as to who we should partner with. So it's been a great relationship so far, and we really appreciate working with you. So, and thanks for joining.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on. Yeah, we're going to move on here, and we're just going to talk about the value of the Medicaid reimbursement. At the end of the day, this is a service that you're providing to your students already, and a lot of schools out there are spending a lot of dollars out of pocket, and oftentimes not recouping any portion of that money. And to us, it seems like a lost revenue stream to at least get reimbursed for some of the money that you're providing to the students. It's something that you have to do and you are doing, and so you should benefit from being able to get some of that revenue back. So from right here, the main point being, again, is recouping costs, right? Dollars out of pocket, you should be getting something back in return, and there are programs out there that allow you to do that. So since you are delivering these services, things including speech therapy, counseling services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, nursing services, Christy, my understanding as well is that there is also additional services that could qualify for Medicaid reimbursement coming down the line. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually in Texas, we already allow personal care to be documented and claimed on, which is a huge one here in Texas, and also transportation.
And transportation, great. So the complication of this matter is obviously how cumbersome the process can be. Oftentimes schools have looked into it. I've heard various stories where they've looked into it, they've gone through the process and then just felt that it was so burdensome that oftentimes that they just kind of decide not to move forward on the Medicaid reimbursement process. Oftentimes schools are understaffed, don't have enough staff on hand to actually dedicate the time that it requires to make sure that you're doing this properly. And due to that, it oftentimes gets just put to the back burner. Some schools have attempted it and then not had great success and kind of, don't take full advantage of the reporting process and the recouping of costs. And so you get the whole gamut across the board of those that are participating in it and those that have either had a bad experience or just not getting the full measure of it. Again, if you're spending the money, can you recoup a portion of it, of the costs? And that way, if you can recoup a portion of it, could you also expand those services that you're already providing and provide a better quality of service to the students? So with that, when we talk about, those that qualify, I guess, Rich, as you mentioned before, the proxy to this really is, the free and reduced lunch numbers first off. Is that correct?
Yeah. So thinking about just sort of what qualifies for Medicaid reimbursement is two things. One is the students that are on Medicaid, and then it's the intersection here of the qualifying services. So all the services we listed and talked about. Typically, the overlap here might be as high as 15% of your student population. But obviously, if you serve a higher number or portion of your students are free and reduced lunch, then that number might go higher. Or if you have a higher population of students that receive these services than the average, then again, you might have a higher population of students that you could bill back for the services you're providing for them. So the average reimbursement kind of for students that qualify and for the services that qualify, typically that is about $1,400 per student per year of the ones that qualify. And again, this number could be higher if your population is different than the average. When we talk about the program, it's once you set this program up, it will be in place, for as long as you keep the program running. So this is a 10-year, analysis of this would be 300 students that qualify, who fall into that kind of intersection of those two the Venn diagram there. And this is assuming $1,400 of annual billings per qualifying student. So this, the 5-year number, or let me explain the chart here. The bars are the annual number, and then the line is the cumulative number. So if you had 300 qualifying students, you assume modest growth in the number of students or the rate of, or the cost of these Medicaid eligible services over time, this is really going to add up. So 5 years would be over $2 million of billings that if you're not billing, you're missing out on. And then in 10 years, it's closer to $6 million of billings that you're, again, missing out on if you're not in the program. so it's one of these things where you set it up and you can really recoup a lot of cost, over a long period of time. So we'll talk more about. So we think that there's a compelling reason to be billing, and we'll kick it over back to PCG to talk about the platform and the process and how they've created and they've invested a lot of time and energy and resources into creating the platform that they have, which should streamline the billing process.
So we're handing it off to you, Christy. You're up now.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I always like to start this conversation just by clearing up some terminology. In Texas, we like to be different. So when we talk about Medicaid to schools, that is the overarching federal program. When we're in Texas, we call it SHARS. So a lot of you may have heard it called SHARS, and so I just wanted to make sure that I cleared that up in case there's any misconceptions about what we're talking about today. But we're talking about Medicaid, we're talking about SHARS. They're kind of one and the same. We just like to be different here. But what I wanted to really talk to you about on this slide is that basically this is a reimbursement program. And the reason it's a reimbursement program, there's several reasons why it's called that, but one of those is because you're actually already providing the services to kids. And so what the feds and the state have come up with is this way to kind of reimburse you for activities that you're already performing. But part of being able to get reimbursed is making sure that you're, crossing your T's and dotting your I's. And so this slide here just really kind of describes like what your expectation is, and then what PCG is going to do, and then finally that last step, what the state Medicaid agency is going to do in the billing process. So if you'll notice across the top where we talk about charter school, like what is the charter school going to do? Basically we're going to expect you to identify the students and make sure that you're employing the providers necessary for the program. When I said you're already doing some of this, you know that you're already identifying kids who are in special education. So it's kind of step one. And then you're already writing IEPs, which is kind of step two. In your IEPs, you're identifying what services these kids need. And in effect, that's the prescription for services in this program. So that might come from your DIAGs, your IEP team. It may come from your therapist, but someone somewhere in that IEP is already indicating what services this kiddo needs. So then kind of this is where your new step comes in. If you're not already participating in SHARS, what your expectation is going to be is that you document the services that you're providing for kids. And this is great because we have a system that you can use called Easy Track, where you're able to document the services you're providing for students. And it's again, probably something that you're already doing, like your therapists are probably already documenting because that's part of their licensure. But maybe some of the staff that you have that are not are going to be like personal care providers. So maybe your special education teachers, or maybe some of your paraeducators. And why this is helpful to the district is obviously we can then take that data and bill Medicaid and get you some money back for what you're already doing. But it also benefits you in that you have a documentation tool now, a central location for all of your documentation. So if mom and dad, which I'm sure all of you have had this happen before, comes into the school and says, we don't really feel like our child is getting all the services he's required to receive. This documentation tool and the fact that you're having all of your providers document in one system allows you the opportunity to pull the IEP, show parents what's been ordered, and then pull the documentation to support that those services have been provided to the student. So, instead of having to go out to your speech therapist, who may or may not be your staff member, they may be contracted, and then going to your special education teacher and trying to pull documentation from them, you have one central location that you can go to. So we're kind of helping you in more ways than one in order to gain documentation and then get money back for what you're already doing. So that's just some of the ways that we're gonna ask you to help us out here is by documenting what you're doing with kids. And then finally, those additional ongoing requirements. At a very high level, those are just some things that we're going to ask you to do on a quarterly and annual basis. Anytime we ask you to do anything or help to participate in this program, you're going to get guidance and training from us. So that's another benefit of going with a vendor, is that, we know we work with so many school districts and we've worked with so many state agencies that we're able to kind of provide that guidance to you, something that might be a little bit difficult on your own to try to work through or figure out. So once you've provided, all of the steps that we've asked for you to help us support your billing in this process, PCG takes over. And we pull those claims from the system. We have an extensive quality check process where we're going to make sure that those claims meet all the criteria necessary for the program, because our goal is that you are entitled to the dollars that you get reimbursed and you get to keep them. And the last thing we would want is a desk review or an audit to find that, we billed something out improperly, and then your school have to be in a payback situation. So we run this QA process ahead of time so that we're trying to make sure by the time those claims get to the state, they look good and they meet all of the criteria for proper billing. Once they get to the state, then the state agency takes over. They review the claims, they approve or deny them, and then they'll process your payment and you get your money back. We typically will bill on a monthly cycle, and so usually you're going to be getting dollars back on a monthly basis.
Great.
Can we go ahead and move on to slide 12?
Yeah, I'll show you the platform. Here you go.
Sure, thank you. So I just wanted to kind of let you know a little bit, we talked about the process, what that's going to look like, and now I want to just kind of tell you why PCG and Charter School Capital is kind of the platform that would probably work best for your school. So at our core, we have technology. We already have this Easy Track system built. We have reporting tools built into it, and we've used it with so many school districts that we've perfected our documentation tool. This then allows you to kind of document and recoup your costs without you having to try to figure out, like, how am I going to get this to the state? How am I going to make sure my claims are clean, etc. We have all that kind of covered for you. If you also notice on the right side of the screen of this slide, at the top screenshot is a dashboard. This just kind of shows you some of the information that we're going to provide to you guys. Mostly your admins would use dashboard type things. But at the bottom, you'll see what a log actually looks like. And this is going to be where we train your staff how to go in and actually document what they've done with kids. It's a very user-friendly, intuitive product. And again, we've used it all across the nation, so we've had plenty of opportunity to try to perfect the product. One of the additional ways, if you'll notice that second bullet point under technology, that we're helping to support your district other than just getting dollars back to you, is our documentation tool can not only be used to tell mom and dad what we're doing with kids, but your admins can use this to kind of compare what are my contractors telling me they're doing with kids through invoicing, and how does that compare with what they're telling me in my Easy Track system that they're doing with kids. So for instance, if my speech therapist were to send me a bill for 80 hours of services, then you could then go and pull that particular provider's session data and see which kids she worked with for how long and how much she's billing. So it's going to kind of try to help you to find discrepancies, maybe even work out like a checks and balances type system for your invoicing with contractors. And then behind all of this, our technology, our processes, et cetera, you have a dedicated, knowledgeable team, both nationally and locally. So you're going to have an account manager that you report to as far as support for Medicaid to schools and the SHARS program. And the reason that we like to do this in Texas is that we want you to have kind of one point person that you reach out to for technical issues, for billing questions, et cetera. We want to come in and feel like an extension of your school. We don't want you to just see us as an outside vendor. We want to be someone that you're partnering with to try to help you to be more successful, both financially, but then also in supporting your students. And Ryan, I think it's time to pass it back to you, unless you have any questions for me.
Okay, no, very thorough, and I appreciate it. I was just thinking about how easy it can create a situation for a school, particularly one that's not maybe currently billing, but to kind of onboard, make sure they're doing it correctly from the onset, utilizing probably
Mhm.
less staff and resources internally, knowing you guys are there for support the whole time too. So
Yeah,
that's great.
absolutely.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, obviously, some of the key features that you've discussed already is the online service documentation. Not only to collect information from the service providers, but making sure it's logged properly with dashboards, and then submitting documentation to the proper entities. When it says use any device, you can even do this on your phone. Is this something you can access on your phone as well?
Absolutely. iPad, phone.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah, I know we're all in the move all the time, so it's good to be able to do that. Obviously, electronic signature is big help, streamlining the process rather than emails back and forth. I don't know if people actually use fax machines anymore, but electronic signatures are great. Can you discuss a little bit more about the multi-layer claiming quality control process?
Yeah, sure can. So the great thing about working with a team that knows Texas but also has a national team behind them is that helps us to stay up to date with codes and program changes, but also like everything that might be coming down the line nationally. So we try to stay ahead of all of those things that could be coming up. But as far as the actual QA process, we're looking for all the elements and data pieces that go along with your documentation to submit, like I called it, a clean claim to the state. So we're going to make sure that the student has parental consent on file, that they're actually have the services ordered in their IEP, all that good stuff. Because if you're in an audit or a desk review, those are the things that they're going to be looking for and asking you about. So we're just going to try to help you get ahead of that process with our quality control process.
Right. How often do the laws change or the reporting requirements change? Is it like a yearly basis, every 2 years? How frequently are you seeing changes come down?
Yeah, that's a great question. So typically annually, we'll see some sort of procedure code change with the state. And the state of Texas has been in a little bit of change and movement lately within the program. They've actually hired a lot more staff at the state level to try to get just a little bit more handle on this Medicaid in schools. This is not something that they've really known a lot about in the past. They've been focused on medical Medicaid. So we're seeing a lot of changes, a lot of procedure code changes come down and things of that nature. So those are some of the things that we've tasked ourselves with trying to stay up with.
Nice. And from a reporting standpoint, is this a system that you can also see that can benefit the reporting capabilities from the service providers you're already using? I mean, can they, also have some kind of access or reporting mechanism into this system that allows it to be more uniform across all service providers?
Absolutely. So one of the questions that we often get is, well, we don't want to double document. And that makes complete sense. So if you have a therapist that documents for you and turns that documentation in, they could use our system for that documentation. And then they could print sessions or they could export their sessions to Excel and keep up with that session information for their own benefits and their own licensure. And there's any number of ways they could do that. PDF, Excel, they could just export it, to flash drives, etc.
Yeah, that's great. I would assume that also would allow you to probably analyze costs across different vendors that you're using as well, getting snapshots into those kind of reports too. So, yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of feedback from different schools is that, the challenge being is that they're just under-resourced. They don't have enough people on staff to handle this. It's a really arduous process to try to claim Medicaid or portions of Medicaid reimbursement. And, a system like this is really designed to kind of keep that number of staff necessary down, knowing that you're here for support. The online training resources and to support that staff that could be dedicated to Medicaid reimbursement? Is that ongoing? Is that, email? Could you go into a little bit more detail that online training resource looks?
Yes, I can. So depending on the size of the school and their training needs, if they're coming to us with very, very limited knowledge, sometimes we'll come out and we'll do a face-to-face training with you to just get you started and going. We want you to feel comfortable. If you don't know what you're doing and you don't feel comfortable talking to your staff about SHARs, then obviously that's not good. So we're going to make sure that, you feel confident moving forward and that you have those training resources for that. The online training resources that we talk about in this slide are ongoing. So like annually, trainings for RMTS training, which is a part of the program. Also like how to use the system as we change or upgrade things, new user trainings. And anytime that anyone, like if you have a project manager who's kind of heading up, the conversations that PCG has with the charter school, as they need additional training or support, we're there to offer that via webinar or phone conversations, whatever's necessary to keep the charter school feeling confident and that they're ready to continue moving along with the program.
Great. And then the virtual help desk support. So again, another feature of the program. Well, I really appreciate you kind of joining us today, Christy, and explaining this in more detail. To the audience out there, if you should have any questions or would like some follow-up information, I'm readily available. As you can see on the screen, my email is there. If you feel like reaching out, we can set up a time to talk and have a conversation. Typically, what we do as first steps, if somebody would be interested in the program, in order for us to get a better understanding of the school we're speaking with and the kind of program that they're running and what their potential qualification for this would be, is to fill out a readiness assessment. It would be probably about a 2-page document of questions about the population you're serving, the services you're providing. Gives us a better understanding where we can start to run some potential numbers and what that might look like as a starting point for a conversation. So if you would be interested in, as a follow-up discussion, just to kind of find out more, again, feel free to reach out to me, Ryan Eldridge at charterschoolcapital.org. We'll get that process started, and then we can set up a more in detailed conversation with Christy as well. I'm looking, I don't see any outstanding questions, so hopefully that means that we answered all the potential questions you might have on the air, but if anything pops up after the fact, please reach out. Really appreciate you logging on today and joining us and giving us the opportunity to speak with you and discuss the program. Christy, thank you very much. Again, really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
And yeah, anytime. Well, that's it for today. We're going to give you back your morning, and hope all is well for everybody out there. Thank you for joining.